I'm Grant Stern, and this is Pinac Live. We're here with journalist Ted Rall. Ted has a column and has had a column at the Los Angeles Times newspaper and has been published and is syndicated across the nation for quite a long time. He's an award winning cartoonist as well as essayist, and he's joining us because the Los Angeles Times uh, posted a basically an editorial saying that they believe he had lied about a jaywalking arrest in 2011. This all goes back to a May 11th, 2015 column. Ted, thank you so much for joining us on Pinac Live today.
Thanks for having me, Grant. One little correction, the jaywalking incident was in 2001.
Right, the jaywalking incident was in 2001. The column was May 11th of this year.
That's right.
So tell our audience a little bit about your work in general before we get going, because you've been working in the space for quite a while.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm a syndicated cartoonist, and my principal job was at the LA Times until July 27th. I am also the editor of skewednews.net. I also write for a website called anewdomain.net. And I'm also a frequent war correspondent, I should say sporadic war correspondent, and a graphic novelist. My next book comes out August 25th. It's called Snowden, about the NSA whistleblower. And so I'm kind of your political left of center, political pundit, cartoonist, columnist, occasional war correspondent, one of those.
Occasional jaywalker, I hear.
No, I was innocent. I'm actually a very frequent jaywalker, actually. I jaywalk all the time, but this was not one of those times. Ironically, I've never actually been arrested while jaywalking, only when not jaywalking.
So let's start with the actual incident. And there's an audio tape that I've listened to, and I commented on. And if you're listening out there, you can go to soundcloud.com/photographyisnotacrime.com. We reshared the audio. We linked to it in the Pinac Live post as well. And it basically seems to indicate that you were cuffed at a certain point. There's a woman that was defending you nearby, but the audio tape is of horrible quality. And I had to put on the big studio headphones with the noise canceling and listen to the cleaned up version to hear what was going on. But tell our audience what happened in that 2001 incident.
Yeah, sure. Well, and by the way, the woman clearly says, take off his handcuffs. So there's no question that unless she's making that up out of thin air, that I was handcuffed.
Well, the officer can be heard to say that you are being detained. Like, he says, you're detained clearly in the recording.
And he says, no, 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 no. I'm writing him a ticket first when she says, take off his handcuffs, twice. And there's several other people also screaming similar things and even giving him a hard time, giving their sexual insults, like, why don't you ride his asshole? Here, why don't you fuck me and get it over with? So it's very clear that there was an angry crowd and that I was handcuffed. And so yeah, I mean, those are some of the big contentions between the LAPD version and my version. Well, here's what happened in 2001, and it's what I wrote about. It's not really that big a deal in the greater scheme of things, considering how bad police violence is and can get in this country. But nevertheless, it was a little out of control. So I had just taped the Bill Maher show nearby at the CBS studio in West Hollywood. And I was walking on Melrose at Boulevard in the West Hollywood section of LA in order to get dinner with some friends, including some of my in-laws. And I was walking by myself, and I walked across an intersection, didn't jaywalk under any definition of jaywalking, waited for the little green walking guy to come on, stepped off the curb, didn't touch the white lines, got across before the red guy started. The best crossing of a street that you could possibly hope for. Look, I wasn't in a hurry.
Los Angeles, I'm sure jaywalking is the #1 crime.
Well, yeah, there's not much else going on in LA. I don't. Thank God they can clean this up. But anyway, the point is I wasn't jaywalking, and that was really the crux of my subsequent complaint, because I was innocent. So but anyway, the motorcycle cop approached me. He took my driver's license, cuffed me, threw me up against the wall, told me to stand still, and then started writing me up as an angry crowd gathered. The Melrose was kind of at that time a counterculture kind of area, a lot of punk rocker types hanging out. So a lot of people started gathering curiously, and they don't like police officers, and they certainly don't like them when they're mistreating people. And clearly I was being mistreated. So they were, this went on for a little bit of a time. And then ultimately the officer released me from the handcuffs, and then gave me my citation, and then he said, "Here's your driver's license," and then threw it on the ground, specifically in the gutter. And then at that point, his colleague, who was Caucasian, my officer was African American, zoomed up on his own motorcycle and said, in so many words, "Let's go. What are you doing? Stop that." And you're attracted, obviously there was a crowd. This wasn't good. And the two of them left together. So I was very upset. I showed up at dinner with my friends, some of whom were native Angelenos, which I'm not. I'm a New Yorker. And we were trying, and I told them about this whole story, and they all still remember, most of them remember that night, what I told them happened. And so one of them, who is a local, suggested that I should fight the ticket, and then also that I should file a complaint with the LAPD, Internal Affairs Department.
Did you fight the complaint in court?
Yeah, so I had her take care of it in court. I wasn't on the court date, I wasn't in town. I was in New York. So she went down, she was wired, she went down to City Hall, and basically the way it works in LA most of the time is it's a misdemeanor. So you really don't want to be found guilty because it's a criminal record, even though it's just jaywalking. So what they usually do is they throw out your ticket, but you still have to pay it. And you're just happy because you don't have that criminal record. So it's a shakedown. This is routine. And so she called me with the good news. I had the money. I sent the money in. End of discussion. I filed the LAP. I was still angry about the way I'd been treated, less so about the fact that I'd been handcuffed, and far more so about the fact that I wasn't jaywalking. And this cop obviously had a quota that he had to fill, and he just made things up. It's not the first time, by the way, I've ever had a cop gin up a ticket out of thin air. So, it's disgusting.
Here in Miami, where we're based, they prefer to just say that you ran a stop sign, and that's how they meet their quota. So we're
whether you've run it or not.
Kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite was the time in New York City where a cop was standing in the road in front of me, ordered me to turn right, and wrote me up for an illegal right-hand turn. So, and he was doing that to everybody. Anyway, so I don't know, end of the month, beginning of the month, middle of the month, I don't know, whatever. It's been well established that the West LA Traffic Division has quotas. In fact, there's right now a lawsuit by 10 of those cops who are suing the city of Los Angeles because they don't want to be part of that. So it's absolutely established that they do this. And anyway, the point is go forward 14 years. And I've written about it a couple times over the years, and I wrote about it again in May 11th, 2015, as you referred to. It was a little blog that goes with my cartoon. Like to put this into perspective, they pay me $200 for the cartoon every week, and they throw in an extra $100 so I write the blog. Okay, so then the blog appears in about, I guess, 3 or 4 paragraphs. I described what I just described to your watchers and listeners, and and so it went through editing, no problem. And 2 weeks ago, someone from the LAPD apparently walked a package over to the LA Times that found their way to my editor. That package contained my original complaint, my original ticket, a secretly made audio tape of the encounter by the police officer, whose name is Will Durr, and also and a transcript that purports to show what happened on the tape.
Now, I've got the article right here. Is this the right guy?
That's the article. Yeah, that's it. Well, that's the cartoon that goes with the article. Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, I mean it is an important question. In Miami, they've actually had jaywalking crackdowns, and when they were announced, they led to people calling into the station, the police station that is, and getting that practice ended because seemingly every time a department wants to crack down on jaywalking, citizens tend to find that there's something else a police department could be doing, like solving violent crimes.
Oh, it's a total waste. What little kid ever wanted to grow up and become a cop and stop jaywalkers, right? Has that ever happened? I mean, one day, Daddy, that's what I want to do. I mean, it's perverse and weird. So anyway, what this is about it's not just about a cartoonist. It's really about police interference in the media, and essentially cops having a reporter fired on false charges. So there's a lot of layers to this. So I hope that people will bear with me, and I'll try to get through them as quickly as possible.
Well, the most important thing is that the case was already adjudicated in court, right? I mean, this went through court, right?
Yeah, it went through court.
So it was already adjudicated, and now here the police are somehow punishing you for what you wrote. They're actually trying to stop you from writing more because they don't like the kind of criticism that you've been leveling at the cops.
Yeah, I mean, I have done dozens of cartoons against the LAPD over the years. So they don't like me. That's well established. And so anyway, the point is the audio tape. So the audio tape is 20 seconds of the officer. So anyway, I should go back. So an investigative reporter whose name is Paul Pringle called me up 2 weeks ago today and said, and advised me that there was now this material that proved that I had lied about this entire incident, and it didn't happen the way I said. Specifically, they said there was no angry crowd. I was never handcuffed. I was never thrown up against the wall, and my driver's license was never thrown on the ground. And so I laughed at him because I said, well, I don't know how an audio tape is going to pick up a driver's license hitting the ground, and I don't know how it's going to pick up the sounds of the clicks of the handcuff. But anyway, so I argued with him.
And I'm going to tell our audience too that this audio tape did an especially good job of picking up one thing, and that is wind.
Wind and traffic noise.
Traffic noise. You could definitely hear the officer saying, "You've been jaywalking," very loudly. But
people should go to anewdomain.net. You can go there and look for my byline, and you will find the embedded audio supplied by the LAPD. And it's just basically like 20 seconds of like Officer Wilder, Melrose, and Gardner, and then it's for 6 minutes, and that's it. That's really it.
We by the way shared it at soundcloud.com/photographyisnotacrime.com as well. We just reshared from your SoundCloud account.
Perfect.
And if you go to the Pinac Live article on photographyisnotacrime.com, you can find the links that lead to the corrected version, like the audio corrected version that is, and of course the original is there too. And I listened to both.
So yeah, so the original version is really crappy. And so they said, well, we don't hear you complaining about having been arrested. You don't argue. And I'm like, well, I wrote in my article that I was compliant and polite the entire time. And it's like, well, it sounds like he's being really nice to you. And I'm like, yeah, when he says, here is your license back, you don't see him. You don't hear him throwing it to the ground. And you hear him whistling kind of creepily. And when I first was there, actually, I wondered why he was whistling like that. And apparently this is a cop trick to tamp down the sound that they don't want to come into the mic. So they're whistling into the mic. So whenever people were arguing with him, he was whistling into the mic. And it's also a very short tape. It's 6 minutes, 20 seconds, which is very short for an audio tape of an arrest. They have to check your name in the computer, make sure there's no outstanding warrants and so on. It was just lightning fast, right? So anyway, I was astounded that they thought that this proved anything. And I told both Pringle and my editorial page editor, who called me immediately afterwards, Nick Goldberg, this is a real serious, this is a fucking joke. There's nothing on this tape. And they kept saying, well, nothing proves, nothing here supports your story. And I said, nothing here supports the cop's story. There's nothing here. it's a joke. There's just nothing here. You
Well,
can't.
I mean, I agree. The original unedited, unimproved, where you just hear all the whistling and the wind and
It's a he
all of
said. It's a he said, she said, right?
right. Jaywalking happened or was accused by this cop. But I
And
mean,
that's it.
I
So
think
then I
eerie
need.
parallels between this minor offense of jaywalking and all of the incidents that we've seen surrounding minor offenses, whether they're most of them are driving, but
Sure.
jaywalking, loitering, vandalism incidents, those
Selling
also spur these kind of police overreactions.
Staten Island, selling loose cigarettes on the street.
Hmm.
The traffic stop in Baltimore, that kind of stuff. I mean, broken taillight, not failing to turn signal in Texas for Sandra Bland. So anyway, the point is, they considered it for a couple of days, and then they fired me, and in the most public way. They didn't just let me go, which they could have easily done because I was a freelancer, but they published a letter to the readers that's still on their LA Times website, and anyone can find, that says that I'm a liar and a fabulist, just like Jason Blair or Stephen Glass. It's devastating. For a journalist, this is the end of your work, your end of your career. You can't have that. You're finished. So I didn't know what to do. I was crying. And then people online started stepping forward and saying, I'm an audio technician. I know a little bit about audio. Can you send me the tape and see if I can get something out of it? And I was like, sure. It didn't even cross my mind until then that might even be possible. And I just thought the whole thing was so insane because I knew it had actually happened, which was that I told the 100% truth. But these guys just weren't believing me, and they were relying on this ridiculous empty tape to say, look, this paints this beautiful picture, and it doesn't.
Well, I mean, is there another ulterior motive that somebody at Los Angeles Times might happen for this kind of to enact this kind of public firing, not just to say, well, we're just going to stop publishing this guy and we'll let the readers ask why. They actually went out of their way to make a statement that, once proven otherwise, could be considered slanderous or libel, and not just in the alternative weekly, but in the newspaper of record in Los Angeles.
Well, I think we're in danger of burying the lead, so I want to talk about that. But the lead is the audio tape came back, it's been cleaned up, it's enhanced, and everything was exactly the way that I said. There was an angry crowd. We've been able to isolate at least 4 people shouting at the cop. We know we can almost hear the sounds of the handcuffs. You can probably hear the sound of the cop zipping up his uniform in order to cover up the mic. You can hear him arguing with people about me being handcuffed. You can hear, even actually, I'm kind of wrong about the throwing the driver's license down. You can kind of hear when he does that, you can kind of hear me like sort of stoop down to get it. So there's actually a lot more on that tape than you might think. And it all confirms my story, not the LAPD's. Officer Durr completely lied. And the point is, let me say one more thing. At that point, it was incumbent on the LA Times, as soon as I approached them with this information, to say, look, there's new facts here. This vindicates me. It was incumbent upon them to say, you're right, our bad. We'll issue a correction, a retraction, and we will take you back. And they did not. They haven't done that. And they've just been stonewalling and ignoring my calls, ignoring my emails. And it's now been over a week since they've been made aware of the fact that they were wrong. And obviously they're just scared of being sued, so they don't want to talk to me. But you know what? It's like they're not talking to me is why I might have to sue them. And so it's really insane. But anyway, so getting to motive, now what follows now is speculation. I mean, look, there are several questions. First of all, how did this material find its way out of LAPD evidence over to the LA Times? I have a working theory right now, which I warn could be wrong, but I don't think the tape actually originates with the LAPD. I think it originates with the LAPPL, which is the union, the Los Angeles Police Protective League, so well named, because they're all about protecting themselves and serving themselves. And anyway, the LAPPL issued a gloating blog post immediately after my firing. which you can also find online. Just search for LAPPL and Ted Rall, and you will find it. And I just thought it was very odd that they couldn't contain themselves to this extent. And they say like, let this be a warning to other journalists. Well, the LAPPL pension fund has invested $30 million in Tribune Publishing, which is the parent company of the Los Angeles Times. In addition, the LAPPL also purchased a major share of stock in the San Diego Union Tribune before it was acquired by Tribune Publishing. And at that time, back in 2009, they arranged to have the entire editorial board replaced because they didn't view them as being pro-police enough, or they threatened to pull their investment. So when the cops call the LA Times or the the other paper that I mentioned, the San Diego Union Tribune, they're not just the cops, which is a very powerful organization. They are the boss. They are the owners. They rank above the editor-in-chief and the publisher. So they have a lot of access. And also,
that sounds like a tremendous conflict of interest to allow a police organization that owns part of the newspaper to also have contact with the top editorial staff. I mean, wouldn't that breach the separation and editorial content?
One would think, especially since they have a history of getting editorial page people fired. So I think I was kind of a shot across the bow because I'm a freelancer. I live in New York City. I'm just a cartoonist. They don't take cartoonists very seriously. Word people are gods in newspapers. So I think I was just small fry to them, and they thought they could get away with it, and they thought I probably didn't have the resources to fight it. And I think they also convinced themselves and editor Nick Goldberg that it was true, that I'd lied, that somehow they were able to fill his stupid small little head with the idea that this blank tape told this narrative, and they filled it in, and it was just this confirmation bias that he suffered from. But I think it came from the union, not from the cops. The LAPD have issued to investigative journalist Greg Palast a categorical denial that it originated with the LAPD. Now, categorical denial is a very strong denial, and usually in journalism, you can almost take that to the bank. It's very unlikely that it came from the LAPD, which got me thinking, what if back in 2001, Officer Durr brought his union representative with him to the hearing when I filed that internal affairs complaint? I'm sure he was entitled to do so. And what if they passed out Xerox copies and copies of the audio tape to all the people who were in attendance, the officer, perhaps internal affairs, and the union rep.
At a certain point, that tape would have become public record. And let me...
No, it would never have become public record. Under California law, that tape can't be released without my signature.
Oh, very interesting.
There's a privacy statute, so there's an illegal leak that happened there. So the point is that tape has now, I think it made its way to the LA Times via I think what happened is that day, back in 2001, 2002, when I filed my complaint, the union rep illegally kept his copy of the LAPD file, took it and brought it back to union headquarters, dropped it in there, and there it stayed until May 11th when my piece came out. And it so pissed them off that they walked it over to the LA Times and told my dumb editor that it showed that I was that I was guilty of this heinous journalistic crime. What they didn't count on, and because they're so lazy, stupid, and arrogant, and I mean they being both Nick Goldberg, Paul Pringle, and the LAPPL, was that more information was on that tape and that it would exonerate me. And what they also didn't count on is that I would have an audio forensicist look at it, which is in the works right now. Now, on an informal basis, I've had about half a dozen people tell me in no uncertain terms that there are splices on the tape, that there are things that have been removed. And that makes the tape obviously tampered with. But that's, at this point, I can't prove that. That's just, I would just have to say that's a lead we're pursuing, but it looks... They don't know each other. They all came back, in fact, with the same magic number of splices. So,
whoa. That's not a coincidence. I mean...
Could be, but I would be very surprised.
So let me do this. I want to read the blog post from the LAPPL because I think it is certainly possibly the smoking gun of this case. Uh, it's entitled "The LAPPL Applauds LA Times Firing of Cartoonist Ted Rall." So many within the LAPD were pleasantly surprised at the recent firing of Los Angeles Times opinion cartoonist Ted Rall, which we believe was justified based on evidence proving that he lied about his encounter with LAPD officers. We especially appreciate the Times' reaction, as the media in general often seems eager to publish material portraying law enforcement in a negative light. Rall's dismissal stems from his blog posting on the Times Opinion LA site earlier this year, in which he described an encounter with LAPD officers in 2001 when he was stopped for jaywalking. In his blog, Rall accused the officers of mistreatment, including pushing him up against the wall and throwing his driver's license into the gutter. Since the blog post, the LAPD has approached the Times and provided reports and records of the incident, including an audio tape of the encounter that proved the inaccuracy of Rall's statements. After reviewing the evidence and seeing the serious discrepancies between the facts and recent claims, Nicholas Goldberg, the editor aforementioned of the Times editorial pages, announced yesterday that Rall's work would no longer be featured in the paper. And then it continues to say, this serves as an example of how an accusation and subsequent negative story about the behavior of police officers may well be inaccurate and feed a negative narrative about law enforcement. We hope other news publications will take note of the Times' willingness to hear and respond to the other side of the story and look at the facts. We believe this process, more often than not, will vindicate law enforcement officers. As an advocate for our LAPD member officers, the LAPPL strives to promote officer rights and correct unjustified accounts that unfairly criticize the good work police officers perform daily to protect the safety of the public. We commend the Los Angeles Times for getting this story right and doing the right thing when presented with the facts. So, I mean, the LAPPL is clearly saying that LAPD provided this information. I mean, they're just coming out and saying it was done.
Well, they're not saying that. They're not admitting that they provided the information.
Well, LAPD isn't, but in this article it says LAPD approached the Times and provided the reports and records of the incidents, including an audio tape.
Yeah, they are blaming the LAPD, and Nick Goldberg also blamed the LAPD, but I don't think it's technically the LAPD. I think it's the LAPD/LAPPL.
Sure.
I think they're almost one and the same.
Usually part of the LAPD. They're just part of the rank and file, not the brass. But I mean, a lot of what I saw was your cartoons condemned the brass for condoning what the rank and file members of the LAPD have done over the years, like Chief Charlie Beck. He's a frequent target of your ire. I mean, I would say that, or would you say that the chief is a more frequent target than just simply the rank and file officers of the LAPD, or is it usually
absolutely
spread around?
I think it depends on what's going on, depends on the idea that I have for the cartoon. It all depends. It's not like, oh, I'm going after Charlie Beck today. It's more like, oh, here's this story and what's the best and what's right and what's the best way to show it.
So, I mean, tell our audience about a few of the times that you've criticized LAPD for doing the wrong thing, and you've done it in your syndicated column or in your columns that are being published for the Los Angeles Times. Because if the police don't want people to hear about this, clearly it's something that people need to hear more about.
Well, I mean, what's going on is, look, the LAPD is invented the SWAT team. It's the most militarized police force in the United States, and arguably, in many ways, it functions as no better than a criminal gang. Everyone remembers Rodney King and the Rampart scandal. Never really changed since the bad old days, and it's just a disgusting organization. I got to say, it's a target-rich environment for a political cartoonist. Really hard to resist. I mean, these cops drive around LA like they're part of an occupying army, like the U.S. troops were driving through Baghdad in 2003. And so, they're jerks. They're arrogant. They're violent. They're aggressive. They're racist. And it's so there's a lot of problems with them. So that's why there's a lot of criticism to be made, I guess. And they didn't like seeing that criticism. I mean, they don't just want to shoot black people. They don't want people to draw cartoons calling on them to stop shooting black people. So they want to be able to just do whatever the hell they want. I mean, look, you don't live in a democracy if cops can fire a reporter, and that's exactly what just happened here.
Well, it certainly seems to violate the First Amendment. And if does California have an anti-slap law on the books?
I'm not sure about that. I will tell you that it also, but we are also talking about fraud in terms of the tampered tape. You're also talking about stealing evidence from and violation of my privacy rights. We're talking about defamation on the part of the LA Times and possibly the LAPD or the union, because they are aware of the fact now that they made the wrong decision, and yet they're refusing to retract. So it's a hot mess, you know.
Should the Los Angeles Times force owners who are being reported upon by the newspaper to divest their ownership to prevent conflict of interest?
I don't believe that there should be any law permitting investments by police pension funds into media companies. It shouldn't be permitted for the police union to invest in a media corporation. I mean, I actually don't think that publicly traded media corporations are a good idea anyway. I mean, if a major hedge fund buys Tribune Publishing, then they're going to get favorable coverage in the business pages, and that's not cool either. I mean, just basically, the corruption is pretty extreme. I mean, in this case, you know, you would hope that you'd have a little bit of a cleaner separation between church and state. And, you know, the plot thickens. The current publisher of the LA Times wants to run for mayor. He almost certainly will run for mayor next year. He may not, but it looks like he will. And his major political ally in the city is LAPPL.
Yeah, it's like that sometimes. Now, I saw an article that specifically quoted some of the Los Angeles Times published ethics guidelines and rules for using anonymous sources. And they did consider all of the source for this anonymous. So we do not know, or the LA Times has not yet revealed, who the source of the leaked tapes would be. Sure. Can you tell our audience a little bit about the ethics rules that we're talking about that the LA Times kind of ran over in a rush to make the LAPPL and the LAPD officers happy?
Yeah, I mean, I actually agree with the LA Times' ethic rules. The rules were issued in June 2014 and basically say that anonymous sources should be avoided as much as possible, unless we're talking about people who have a genuine fear of perhaps physical retaliation or serious professional retaliation and have very important information to reveal. They should go on the record, or their quotes or their information should not be used, and their information should be properly sourced. And those are kind of the rules that I think any good journalist follows. They're certainly the rules I've always followed. And what's in this particular case, I think it's probably going to be a big stretch for the LAPD or the union to argue that they were worried that an evil cartoonist was going to harm them physically. It's probably a big stretch for them to say that they're afraid of me. The contrary is certainly true. I'm certainly afraid of them, but they don't. And certainly, it also isn't really newsworthy. They didn't present anything that was particularly important, even if it had been true. And you know, I mean, even if I had completely lied in my blog post, which I absolutely did not, this. You know, by the standards of journalism, most editors probably wouldn't have fired me. They probably, at most, a hard ass might have given me a 30-day suspension, and most editors would have just appended a note to the original blog and said, there's some new information that's come to light. The LAPD disagrees. You know, we'll leave it up to the readers to decide who's right. And you know, so to pull the nuclear option like this, based on really flimsy evidence, especially evidence that's been proven now to be completely falsified and did not contain what people thought. I mean, look, the new information was revealed within 48 hours of my firing.
And let's clarify that what you call the nuclear option by the LA Times, that's not just firing or termination, but that's also publicly saying and leaving it on their page that you're a liar, you're a bad guy.
That's
Don't hire
right.
this person.
Yeah, they could have easily let me go unceremoniously, and I would have just vanished from the page. That happens all the time. I mean, I'm a freelance cartoonist. I lose gigs all the time. That's just normal. They come and they go.
Let's talk about one of those incidents, because you had a couple of them over the years. If you read the Wikipedia page, there's a section for controversies, and I think that if you're putting your opinion out there, if you're drawing cartoons, there's going to be hits or misses, and the misses are always publicized a lot more than the. Just like with the police, they don't like that when every traffic stop that goes okay doesn't make the news. So let's talk about some of the misses, and then we'll talk about some of the prizes as well.
Sure.
So just name one of the controversies that you've been embroiled in over the years because of a editorial cartoon that offended one group or another, because it's going to happen if you're a cartoonist and you're in that space.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, it's going to happen, especially if you have like more extreme opinions, and I do. So, I draw typically 200 to 300 cartoons a year, which means that over the past 20 years, I've produced probably close to 5,000 cartoons. And so, yeah, a few of them have hurt people's feelings and sensibilities. It doesn't mean I would take them back, but they nevertheless did that. So, I mean, probably the most famous or infamous, depending on your perspective, is one called Terror Widows that followed the 9/11 attacks, in which case I was trying to do a cartoon that lampooned the way the media was fetishizing death and trying to commodify 9/11 in order to gin up support for invading other countries and war in general, and for Bush and the Republicans in office. And that cartoon was pretty rude, and I probably wouldn't change the basic essence of it. I might have teed it up a little bit more carefully, so that it was clear that I was making fun of the media and not the widows. But that's like, it was. What can I say? I mean, I don't withdraw.
Fine border between ruining the joke and doing what you do, which is expressing yourself. It's a free country with free expression. We even let
it's still a funny cartoon.
I'm sure it is. And of course, the perspective that people take on these things changes radically over time. 10, 12 years ago, people really bought what the mainstream media was selling when it came to Iraq, and it turned out to be a horrible debacle. And a few people like me were writing letters to the editor that didn't get published.
That's right. That's exactly right. So, yeah.
So, I mean, just so our audience understands, like you've been published in the New York Times. Name a few of the other publications, and let's talk about some of the awards that you've won over the years as well, because you've been active for about 20 years or so in journalism, 22 years.
Yeah, that's right. So, Time, Newsweek, Rolling Stone, Esquire, New York Times, LA Times, Washington Post, Village Voice, hundreds of publications across the United States and around the world. You name Chicago Tribune, you name it. There's a good chance I've been in it.
What was the story that got you nominated for the Pulitzer in 1995, where you became a Pulitzer Prize finalist?
It wasn't for a story. It was for my cartoons. So okay. you sort of, it was 96. Well, and I was a finalist for a portfolio of cartoons, which is what you submit.
And then I saw that you've won the Robert F. Kennedy Journalism Award. Can you explain that a little bit and why they awarded that to you a couple of times?
Well, twice. The RFK Award is actually is something I'm very proud of, and it's for coverage of the problems of the poor and disadvantaged. So it's for basically people who speak up for the underdog, the way that Robert F. Kennedy did. So that was for my cartoons as well.
So, I mean, I understand that one of the reasons we delayed this interview is that you're speaking with attorneys. Where do you go from here?
Well, I mean, actually, I was actually thinking after I hung up with you, I might just pick up the phone and try to call Nick Goldberg myself. I doubt he'll pick up, but it would be interesting. What could go wrong? And I might do that. But anyway, I would like to resolve this. The Times should do the right thing. I just want my job back. I want my life back and my reputation back. I'm never going to get my whole reputation back, because even if the Times apologizes, not everyone's ever going to hear that about it. As Mark Twain said, the truth, the lie is halfway around the world before the truth gets up in the morning, or something like that. And and that's really true. But it would be great. I just want to draw comics. I'm on deadline right now. I've got things that are late. I want to draw comics. I just want a retraction and an apology, and I want to go back to work. That's really all I want. And if they won't let me do that, I'm going to have no choice but to pursue the legal angle to force them to do the right thing.
Well, Ted, I really appreciate you taking time out. I know that it's like the center of the hurricane there, and you're just kind of stuck in the eye.
Yep.
Tell our audience where they can find your work today, which websites, and where they can find you on Twitter, Instagram, or any other platform that you're on.
Basically, if you on any social network, if you just search for Ted Rall, you'll find me at Twitter, Ted Rall, Google Plus, Ted Rall, Facebook, Ted Rall. If you go to rall.com, you'll find my website, and you'll find a lot of my writing at anewdomain.net and also skewednews.net.
Alrighty, Ted, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the chance to tell my side of this story.
I'm Grant Stern, and this is Pinac News. Be the media.